Hi, I'm Bonnie Stelmach, and I'm a faculty member in Educational Policy Studies at the University of Alberta. I've been researching parents' roles in schools for over a decade now, and as a former high school teacher, I've really focused my research on the secondary level. That does tend to be a time when parents' involvement in schools changes. Anecdotally, I know that educators see this shift, and they often say parents disappear. But in fact, from my research, I know that parents have a sustained interest when their children enter junior and senior high school, but they do tend to feel displaced. I've often heard them say, teachers don't need us anymore, and they don't know where to place themselves. So they're often really behind the scenes. And I became really interested in the language that they used about displacement and not knowing where to fit in and how to be involved. Educators often ask the question, how do we increase parent involvement? And what they tend to mean by that is, how do we get parents to the school, doing school-directed things? And that isn't really how high school parents in particular see themselves anymore. And we know that students at this age want autonomy, they want independence, and so they're really looking for their parents to kind of go away for a little bit. So a research project that I'm currently working on is funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, and it's called School Community in Rural Provincial North: Achieving Conceptual Clarity in a Zombie Category. So I started to flip the question about how do we involve parents more in schools to a question like this: what makes parents feel in community in their children's schools? Ulrich Beck is a sociologist who came up with the term zombie category, and it really means a term that still kind of wanders our language landscape but has lost its meaning. It's kind of like when Facebook used the word friends, we started to lose what friend really means. Community is kind of like that. It's a zombie category because things have shifted so much that the way we gather, integrate, interact, communicate is so different. And I was really interested in how parents conceptualize being in community in their children's schools. I used case study as a research design to explore this question in Alberta, in rural northern secondary schools. I had 3 schools who volunteered for the project, and I worked with 21 parents. We first did what's called a walking interview throughout the school, and I was using a methodology called a socio-material approach. And this is an approach that assumes that it's not just what people say, but their environment, its gestures, its symbols and artifacts that also have meaning for people. And people who study rurality will tell you that rural is not only a physical place, it's also a psychological space. So I was really interested in how people interacted with the school. So we started off with walking interviews as a group, and then I followed that up with focus groups with parents, just to get a sense of their interactions with the school and whatever I observed and places they lingered and what they talked about in our travels throughout the schools. I then asked parents to volunteer for individual interviews. So a lot of the parents who participated in the focus groups did that, and I had other parents come forward to be part of interviews as well. And I wanted to get their sense of what community was. 3 themes seemed to come out from the data, and one of them was called putting yourself out there, which really came from the language of the participants. And I was interested in the discourses that parents used when they talked about community. Putting yourself out there was really a discourse of personal responsibilization. And that's a term that has come again from sociology, which really assumes that people are responsible for their own fate. And it comes from a neoliberal assumption that our economic success in life is up to us. We can be self-entrepreneurial and we can be successful. In rural communities, I heard a lot that parents have to really step up and become part of things. They can't wait to be invited. And that really kind of goes against what we hear in the literature about how teachers have to be inviting. So that was a really interesting theme that came out. The second theme we called breaking barriers. And this was a discourse of navigating what parents called legacy and generational families. This is really unique to rural schools, Those families who've been part of the community for generations continue on to have a presence in the school. They are the go-to people for principals and teachers. They know they can be relied upon, but they also perform an interesting gatekeeping function for parents who don't come from a generational family. That was a really interesting finding for us. The third theme we called recentering students. This was a discourse of having students be the ultimate nucleus of what parents feel when they talk about community. Anytime we asked about what makes you feel in community, they would reference the things that they do with and for students, not only within the school, but outside the school. And a lot of their interactions were outside of the school. This became a really important theme because the literature focuses on in-school parent-teacher interactions. And for the secondary school context, we know that this becomes very different. So with these themes in mind, we think that there's something unique about rural contexts and certainly something unique about secondary school contexts. So this is just a snapshot of the study. If you want more information, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.